Okay. Yeah. So I think what we were talking about just now is pretty interesting. If you want to, we can just pick it up from there and then I can figure out how we're all going to go in this conversation. But I think
Yeah.
we've established that we can just sit here and chat and I think it'll be great.
Yeah.
You recently started a podcast and we were just talking about some of the things. I was like, okay, so some of this conversation may be cut out because I'm really trying to get better, just get better. Whenever we first start out in business, it's just okay. Everything is not that great. And it's like the best that I can do at the time, but like just making peace with that. Okay, this year it was spent doing the thing. And then now for season 2, it's gonna be like, "Oh, okay, now I can improve now that I know what I'm doing." So, do you wanna talk about some of I know you just started a podcast. Tell us about it and some of the things that you've learned now that you're, like, 10 episodes in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm everything you're saying. I'm a huge fan of taking messy action and just diving in and trying the thing. So I realized that if I wanted to grow a personal brand and I wanted to put myself out there as someone who's been an entrepreneur, someone who has that entrepreneurial experience, and someone who just like gets it and gets how hard it is, that I needed an effective way to deliver that message to people. And so I thought about doing a podcast for a while and I went back and forth on it. And then finally, I was just like, I'm going to rip the band aid. I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to do this. And honestly, my like that whole thing that happened where I was like, I'm going to do this. And I recorded my first episode, all happened in the matter of 2 hours, perhaps.
Oh, wow.
Cause yeah, cause I was just like, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to like, I have to put myself out there and do it because I know that if I don't do it like right now, I'm going to talk myself out of it. And I'm going to say, no, no one wants to hear what I have to say. That's a terrible idea. And so I was like, I'm just going to hit record and I'm going to just do this. And so I did. So my first episode was literally not planned at all. I just jumped on and I started talking. And I was like, okay, I guess I should introduce myself. Here's my story. Here's my background. Here's my method. And that was basically it. And then the second episode, I refined it a little bit more. And I was like, okay, perhaps I should figure out a topic that I want to talk about. And so I chose a topic and I talked about that, but I didn't really have a strategy or a plan. And then I would say, like, the next couple of episodes, I was like, okay, I have to have a firm plan. Like, I have to map it all out because if I was delivering a webinar or a workshop, I have to have a slide deck and I have to know exactly what I'm going to say. I have to practice it. So I did that.
Oh, wow.
And then that it just felt really like clunky kind of and too rehearsed.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not what people want. And so now I feel like I'm finally finding my rhythm. And what we were talking about is how like this idea of just jumping onto a Zoom call and like having an authentic conversation with another human being, another entrepreneur, someone who like is in the same space as you, it's really more so what people want is to like, have those authentic conversations.
Yeah, because it's very different than the picture that we see on Instagram a lot of times. It's like people are
Yeah.
generally putting their best selves forward or, an edited version at the least. And so just having that, yeah, this stuff can be really hard and you can get in your head a lot. Let's just have a conversation because this is what people need to hear. Like, yes, there are strategies and there's things that you can do, but like the mental piece is so much of entrepreneurship that like let's just have all the real conversations about it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. The mental piece is the hardest piece, in my opinion. Like, you can, when I started my first business, I started very naively. And then I slowly started to figure out, like, oh, I need to learn how to run a business. And so I did. I figured that out along the way. But I would say learning how to run a business and pull your P&Ls and figure out your cash flow and all of those things, that is challenging for sure in the early days. But I would say the bigger challenge is like getting out of your own way and getting out of your own head, right?
yeah, so that is a product-based business with your energy or the energy bars, granola bars. Correct me, please.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So it doesn't exist anymore. I should say that too. Currently, I'm a business coach. I'm a professional speaker and I'm a business professor as well at a local college. But prior to doing all of the business education, I actually had a food business that I was scaling full time for about 4.5 years. And so that business, it's like I was in the corporate world before I started that business. I was in a desk job and I just had gone to the point in my life where I was like, there has to be more to life than this. There has to be more to life than just like sitting at a desk day in and day out doing the same thing. I got to find something more fulfilling to me in
Right.
my life. And I made the hard decision to quit my desk job cold turkey. Took me about 3 months to build up the courage, but I finally did. I walked into my boss's office, handed my resignation, and I started a health food bakery, is what it started out as.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so it was just this like little bakery in my hometown at a farmer's market. So very small. And I was doing everything with gluten-free, dairy-free, 100% whole food, no refined sugar, like super healthy, but like also dessert. So like
Yeah.
really delicious. And then I had an energy bar as well. And so eventually I decided to take the energy bar and really like scale with that. And so I was able to get the energy bar into about 300 stores across Canada. And so I really scaled it to this like national level, which was cool. And like it was the adventure that I needed. But then I slowly started to realize that it wasn't the right fit for me in terms of a business model, in terms of being in the food industry. And so that's when I pivoted out and got into the coaching space.
Yeah. What just like a plethora of experience though, because not only is it a product-based business where you're fulfilling orders and doing all of the things, brand new into entrepreneurship, and then also, like, the food industry is a whole other
The
like
food industry is next level. Like it's honestly what there's so many regulations. There's so much to learn. Like you're getting health inspections and audits. There's just so much to learn in that space.
Yeah, so did you, like, have to get a commercial kitchen and all of those things? And wow, that's
Yeah.
like as somebody who just on a went into that, that's just, like, mind-blowing. That's a lot of experience real quick.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely thrown into the fire for sure.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of messy action. Cause like I wouldn't have said that before I started this business. I wouldn't have said that at all. Like I was a very risk adverse person. I liked my routine. I liked stability and security. And then I got into that food business like very naively, I would say. Like I really had no idea of what I was getting into. And it was probably for the best, right? Because
Yeah.
had I known, like I might not have done it. And then I get into it and I'm like, oh, okay, crap. Like I have to figure out how to do all of this stuff. Like I have to figure out like how do I get a food handler certificate so that I can produce this food? How do I like talk to the health unit about this and get my health unit inspections? Like where do I find a commercial kitchen space that's
Yeah.
affordable and isn't going to bankrupt my business, right? There were so many things to learn.
So were you getting, like, coaching at that time, or was this, like, Google University?
And for sure, Google University. Yeah, 100%, 100%. I will say I did tap into like the small business centers in
Uh-huh.
my region and tried to educate myself by going to like workshops and finding out as much as I could from the people around me. And I would say that was my biggest education was talking to other food entrepreneurs. And they were the ones that would be like, "Oh, you have to go get your food handler certificate before you can do anything else. And like, here's how you scale your business and here's how you talk to distributors and retailers and like all of those things." It was all learned like on the fly from other people that were doing the same thing as me.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And so what was, like, the catalyst to send you from that business? Tell me about that transition of knowing it was time, of real recognizing that, okay, this business model is not something that's jiving with my lifestyle or whatever it was. Like, tell me
Yeah.
about that transition.
Yeah. So I had gotten into the food industry for, I would say, the same reasons that most people get into the food industry. I loved making food. I love making food. I love eating food. I love sharing food with other people and like seeing the joy it brings into their lives. Like, I love food. And as I started scaling my business, of course, you need a team of people to support you. And so I had to pull away from production. So I wasn't producing the food product anymore. I had a team that was doing that. And I wasn't really getting that one on one connection to the customers anymore either, because I was selling to distributors and those distributors would sell to the retailers and those retailers would sell to the end user customer. And so I was like really far removed from all of that. And so I'm building this business and I'm starting to realize like, I think when you get into the food industry or really like a lot of industries, you don't know what you don't know, right? Like you have no idea necessarily when you get into an industry what a successful business model in that space looks like. And so as I started to realize this, like, oh, okay, in the food industry, like if you really want to make money in the food space, you have to scale this like massively, right? This needs to be even further than what I got it to. And so I started to look around, okay, how do you do this? What are the steps to do this? And so I started to realize I need to get investment. So I had been bootstrapping it the entire time. Like I was just like relying on my very small amount of savings and like the cash flow I was generating in my business and doing like some programs that I could get government grants through and just trying to like pull it all together. But I was like, if I'm going to do this for real, I'm going to need to get investment. I'm going to need to get a contract manufacturer, like a co-packer to produce this. Because again, like I took a small business and just was like, I'm just going to make this bigger and bigger. And that's not necessarily how you scale. And we were manufacturing ourselves in house, by hand still, which was insane. Like I don't suggest people do that at that level. It was nuts. And so I was like, I need to get somebody who has the automated equipment to produce this product to produce it for me. There were a number of things I needed to do to get the business where I wanted it to be. And I was like, wait a second, do you actually want to do this?
Yeah.
Is this the business that I want to have? Is like this big, like scalable thing where you really scale it to this huge level and then you sell it for like millions of dollars or whatever. Sounds cool. It sounds cool. But honestly, that's not what I wanted. And I don't think that's what most entrepreneurs like truly
Yeah.
want. I just wanted to be able to make a living. I wanted to work on my own terms. I didn't want to have a boss. I wanted to be able to travel the world whenever I wanted to. And I realized like having this business model that I had created wouldn't give me. And so that was, I think, the big turning point for me was this isn't going to get me to the goals I have for my life. I need to do something else.
Yeah. So, how do you coach people on that transition now? Or, like, how did that look for you? Like, as far as once you decided, "Okay, this is not working for me," what do you do next?
Yeah, for sure. That's a hard question, right? Because I talk about it in this kind of removed way because it's been a few years since I
Yeah.
decided to move on from that business, but it was not an easy decision to make because you're committed at
Right.
that point. Like I put 4.5 years of my life into this business. And when I started it, I was like, this is it. This is
Yeah.
my thing. I am doing this for the rest of my life. This is what I'm doing. This is my career path. And so to put all of that time and effort and energy into a business to then turn and decide to close it, that's not an easy decision to make. And so I had one client that made the same kind of decision and I could feel it coming on. Every time I would meet with her, she was like, Nicole, I'm just like not happy with this. I'm
Mhm.
just not happy like doing this. This isn't what I want. And so I coached her through, okay, what do you want your life to look like? let's say in 5 years' time, you could have your most ideal life. What does that look like? And she was like, oh, yeah, okay, this is cool. So I want to, my boyfriend and I have been dating for a while. She's like, I want to get married. I want to start having kids. I want to buy a house and do all of these things. And I was like, she told me her whole dream. And I was like, that sounds like a fantastic dream. That sounds really cool. And I can see you lighting up when you talk about it. But nowhere in there did you say anything about still having a food business.
Yeah.
And I think in that moment, that was where it really clicked for her that she was like, yeah, you're right. Like
Yeah.
having this business that I have right now does not fit into what I want my life to look like in the future.
Yeah.
And so we had a few conversations around, okay, she decided she wanted to pull back from this. And then I was like, what does this look like? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to close it? If you're going to sell it, what does that? Because there are a number of different options you have when you sell your business. If you're going to sell it to, are you going to get a lump sum payment? Are you going to stay involved in some sort of capacity? And so we had those conversations. And ultimately, she did decide to sell it and she sold it for a lump sum. And now, actually, another one of my friends is the person that purchased the business from her.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah. And so she's running that business. So I get to continue to see that business grow while the original person that owned it has now moved on to a totally different career in consulting. And she's super happy with her decision.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. It's like everything, it's okay if it's just for a season. It's I think as entrepreneurs, we're a dedicated folk. You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
So it's you get in your head like the only way to fail is to quit. But then sometimes it's like what can maybe start out feeling like a failure just because you're quitting when really it's not quitting, it's just a transition. You're taking all of that knowledge and you're pivoting and moving. And I think it just takes just a tremendous amount of courage to just look at your situation, whether you're in corporate or whether you're in your own business or you've created this monster that you no longer love,
For sure.
I'm just saying, okay, this is no longer serving me. What's next? And it doesn't have to be this failure that, but I mean, like it's
Yeah.
all just a mental state. So I think it's really cool that it continues to live on and like she gets to be happy and somebody else gets to be happy. And it's like this whole exchange. Did you sell your business? Is that how it closed or what was your exit?
Yeah, so no, I didn't sell it, and that's actually usually people's first question when I'm like, "Oh, I decided to move out of the food industry," and people are like, "Did you sell your business?" And even to this day, like, a lot of people think that I sold it because it was an acquirable business, like, I could
Yeah.
have sold it. So I ended up shopping it around to a few different businesses locally that would be interested in buying the business. And they were interested, but they wanted me to stay on in the business because I had become the face of the company. Like you become known when you make a product yourself and you start that business, like even when you pull away from actually hand making that product and you have other people making it, you're still the person that people associate with that
Right.
brand. Right? And so because I had become the face of the business, those companies were like, I will buy it from you, but only if you stay on for the next 2 to 3 years. And we have a transition period where you remain the face of the business and then we transition you out of it, which makes sense.
Right.
I would think the same thing. If I was going to purchase a business, I would see it in the same way. But for me, I just wanted to move on with my life. Like I wanted to have like a clean breaks.
Closure. Yeah.
Yeah. And have that closure. And that's the other piece too, is like when you sell your business, you have to be very careful about who you sell it to because that's your baby, right? And the last thing that you want to see happen is this business that you've worked on for 4, 5, 7, 8 years, however long it's been, you hand it off to somebody and they make decisions and choices for that business that you wouldn't have made. And then you have to see that happen. And
Yeah.
like, I didn't really want that to be happening either. So yeah, it's not an easy decision when you decide to move on, like what to do with it. But people are always shocked. They're like, what do you mean you didn't sell it? Like you could have made a lot of money. And I'm like, no, honestly, like the mental like health and peace that I have from just closing it and moving on is worth so much more.
Yeah. I interviewed a lady named Lindsay Pinchuk last year, and she was the founder of Bump Club, which is like a thing for pregnant women, like I don't know the whole thing now, but like the subscription boxes and that sort of thing. But she sold her business and actually did stay on and was completely miserable. And for
Yeah.
2 years, she was just drained. So there's considerations for everything. When it's just I remember her telling me the story where she's the day that I was done with my contract, I closed my computer and I literally blacked out, fell to the floor, blacked she
Wow.
was like, I was so just overwhelmed, mentally exhausted with the whole process that it was just like, done.
I'm done. I'm
Yeah,
done with this. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. And that happens when you pour yourself into a business, right? Like that even I didn't sell and that happened to me as well, right?
yeah,
This business was my life for 4.5 years. I really poured myself into it. And like now looking back, I wouldn't have done it that way. Like I would have had maybe better boundaries around my work so that I didn't get so burnt out. But by the end of that 4.5 years, I was toast. Like I was just like, I'm done. Like I need a break. Like I need to just not be doing anything for a second so that I can catch my breath and regroup because it
yeah,
takes so much out of you when you create something and when you pour yourself into it.
yeah. What does your structure look like now? Are you able to travel and have you set yourself up in that way?
Yeah, yeah. So now, because I have an online business, I am able to just like travel whenever I want to. So we actually are going to Thailand for 3 weeks in February.
That is so
Yeah,
cool.
which is going to be fun. Okay, actually, I'm going to Mexico next week. And then in February, we're going to Thailand for 3 weeks because we can.
Well,
And like, it's so cool to be able to have that freedom to just like travel whenever we want to and be able to turn off when I need to.
yeah.
I will say, like, running a business, no matter what kind of business you have, it's still hard work, right? Like, this idea, and I think there's a lot of rhetoric in the online business space around how you don't have to work that many hours and all you can work like a 4-hour work week and that's all you need to do and you can make 6 figures and then you can just like peace out and go travel the world and live your life. And I just don't think that's real. Like it's still a business at the end of the day. You still have to put in the work. It still is hard work. But I will say that because of my last business, I have learned how to put boundaries around that. And instead of working like 24/7, like I was working probably 15, 16-hour days when I had Boho, right? Now I'm working like an 8-hour day. And then I like clock out. I go to the gym. I have a life outside of my business. And sometimes that means I work on like a Saturday. Sometimes I still work evenings. Like it does happen, but I just have better boundaries around when I decide to work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an important part of what we're all searching for, I think, was having that space and having boundaries are a hard thing to get in place
For
sometimes,
sure.
right? It's usually after some event happened or after they've been really broken, like, where you're just like, "Okay, this cannot continue," before you actually put them in place. I know for me personally, I have a hard time turning my brain off as far as I'm constantly thinking about my business. Like, even when I, quote, unquote, "shouldn't be," because,
Yeah.
okay, here I am, I'm supposed to be watching this movie with my family, and it's, "Oh, what if I" and it's so hard. It's definitely a practice of being more present and trying to live more in the moment, but it's a struggle when you get excited about stuff and just wanna go down those paths all the time, and to balance that with actual like work life balance so that you're not going to burn yourself out.
For sure. Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. Definitely like the burnout is a huge piece. And then also, I feel like I just let the rest of my life go to crap. Like when I had my other business, because I was working so hard on it. And I'm such a focused person that I will like I will choose one thing and I will go all in on it. And that can be a really good skill to have, but it also can for sure lead to burnout because everything else just falls by the wayside, right? Like I was not there were certain things about my house, like I had a fence that was, like, falling over in my yard, and I didn't attend to it for literally years because I was just like, "No, I gotta grow this business, I gotta do the thing," and, like, I was going to networking events, I was going to markets and trade shows and, like, selling my heart out, just trying to build the business and make it work, and I think that's, like, the key thing in my mind is, like, we get so focused on I think a lot of us will start our businesses thinking this is going to work like relatively quickly. I think but most of us go in thinking, okay, I'm going to have to put some hard work into this and I'm willing. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to do the work and I'm okay with that. But we think it's going to work within a matter of like a couple of months or so.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't, then we're like, oh crap, what am I supposed to be doing right now to make it work? And then we start to get into this pattern of okay, I gotta do this and I gotta do this and I gotta do this and I gotta do this. And then you're doing all of the things. And all of a sudden you're working like 15, 16-hour days and your fence is falling down in your yard and you're not fixing it. And you're just like everything else is going to crap because you haven't focused on anything but this business. You pull your head up and it's been 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
That I think that's like a big piece that leads to burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's there's definitely a balancing act. And I think that's why these conversations are so important because I do think that people think, according to the internet, like this is easy, right? Like,
For
according to
sure.
the internet, we should all be having six-figure months and all of those
Yep.
things right now to where it's okay. So when I quit my job, it was, or took a severance, left my job, all of the things, it was like, okay, I'm going to replace my corporate income in 9 months. I've got this time to focus. I'm a great employee. I'm like, I know if I just put the same amount of effort into what I'm doing, they're like, yeah, like
Of
success is
course.
inevitable.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that. And
For sure.
for some people, that may be the path. I'm not trying to discount that or minimize that because I have seen those things happen. But what happens is those things get amplified so much compared to the struggle of everyday entrepreneurship where you're really just putting yourself out there and getting knocked down every day to where it's
For sure.
you have to I've really taken a longer approach this time to where it's okay, I'm not saying a year, I'm saying 3 years. Like I'm giving myself this runway and it just feels more realistic. And I feel like it's a way for me to start bringing in my boundaries of I don't want to look up in 4 years or 3 years and be like, okay, my business is great, but
But I'm
I'm,
not.
yeah, my health is crap and my butt is glued to this chair all the time. Like all of the things. So it's
For
like
sure.
relationships have crumbled. So it's like finding that balance. And I think the more that people are aware that it's going to take a while and there will be plenty of ups and downs, just like knowing that will help people just set themselves up better in my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like a big thing too is a lot of us panic. I think that the hustle and the like burnout and all of those things, it comes from that panic moment where you're like, oh my God, this isn't working. What am I supposed to be doing? And you really start to freak out about it. But I think it's really important once you learn the lesson, and trust me, I have had to learn this over and over again. I'm still learning this lesson, but as you start to realize, wait a second, the only thing that's holding me back from success is literally time. It just takes time. It just takes time. And so I strongly believe that you can be successful with, I'm not going to say 100% of businesses, but like, I think that 99% of businesses could be successful, or business ideas could be successful if you just give it enough time, right? Think about this. I had an energy bar. I had an energy bar. Do you know how saturated that market is? Like, you walk into any health food store, any grocery store, like anywhere, and you're going to see at least 50 energy bars on those store shelves. It's such a saturated space, right? And so when I went into it, I, like, again, very naively just thought like, oh, I have this great energy bar. It's going to work really well. Things are going to go great. And then I started approaching these retailers, and every single retailer was like, oh, another energy bar? Like, nah, we're good. We have enough energy bars. And then I started to panic because I was like, whoa, this is not a good business idea because it's already out there. It's already being done. Like, I need something that's a lot more unique or different, or like some sort of just innovative business idea, not an energy bar, right? And you start to go down on this path. But then I started to realize, okay, not everybody is saying no. Like 75% of the people I talk to are saying no. That's a lot. And that's a
Right.
lot of rejection to deal with. But 25% are saying yes. And once I realized that, I was like, okay, if I can talk to enough people over enough time, then I will get into enough stores.
Yeah.
And then I'll have a successful business. And that's exactly what I did. And so I built a successful energy bar company to a national level with zero experience in the food industry, like no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a business education. Like, this, by everybody's perspective, this is a business that should have failed.
Right.
And literally to this day, I will tell you the reason it didn't is because I kept going. And that's it. Honestly, and I know it's a hard lesson to learn, but if in those moments of panic where you're like, this isn't working, like maybe I should shut it all down and go back to my day job and like all of these things, in those moments of panic, if you can just tell yourself like, no, Nicole made an energy bar business work. Like, I can make my thing work. I just need to give it more time.
Yeah.
That's gonna, I think, help for you to take a deep breath and have those boundaries in your life.
Yeah. I like that. So would you say that would be like if you were, I mean, I guess you do this all the time with your business coaching, but what do you find yourself telling people most often? Like what's your most given advice?
Yeah. I would say honestly, like the biggest piece of advice that I have is this piece of, you just have to keep going. You just have to keep going. And yes, that does involve pivoting sometimes, right? So I think like in the entrepreneurial education space, there's a lot of talk around like finding the right business idea and like really just validating the heck out of that idea before you go to market. And do people want this? Is this the right idea? Should I be doing something else? And what I feel like that does is it sets you up to like just question everything all of the time and like question whether you're even like choosing the right thing. And it really, I think, instills a lot of fear in entrepreneurs that like, well, but maybe I don't have the right product.
Yeah.
And what I say to entrepreneurs is like, it doesn't matter. It does, but it also doesn't, right? Because if you enter the market with the wrong product and you find out that nobody wants your product, okay, cool. You can just pivot that product into something else that will work. And I think that's just a lot of what entrepreneurship is. It's just like jumping in, taking that messy action, do the thing, see if people will buy it. And if they don't buy it, then change. Right? Like, I had to do that when I started Boho because I started as a health food bakery at a farmer's market. And like you were saying, like, I thought, okay, cool. Like, I will make these baked goods. I'll bring them to a farmer's market. And within a matter of months, I'm going to replace my corporate salary because, of course, that's how things work. And,
Right.
and you go into it thinking this. And so I get into it. And because, again, you don't know what you don't know. You can't know everything. It's not going to be perfect. So I jump into this space with this idea of what my business is going to look like. I started doing it, and very quickly I was like, cool. Okay. So I can't make a full time income selling baked goods at a farmer's market. That's not a thing, right? I'm only selling 1 day a week. There's only like a couple hundred people that come to this farmer's market. There's actually, I can run the calculations and find
Yeah.
out like a certain percentage of the people coming through the door buy my baked goods on a regular basis. Like that still isn't even enough to pay my mortgage. Like I can't, this
Right.
isn't going to work. And so then I started to look at if I had a packaged product that I could sell in stores, then that product would sell 5 days a week or 6 days a week or 7 days a week, however often the store is open. Now we're talking about making consistent revenue, right? And so then I pivoted into that space, and that's how I really grew my business. But at the end of the day, like you're not going to have all the answers. And it doesn't matter how long you take in the beginning stages. You could take 1 week, you could take 6 months to think about this idea and whether or not you want to do it. But at the end of the day, you are not going to know until you get into it. So you have to, like, I know it's cliche advice, but you have to just start and like, pivot as you go.
Yes. I love that. That's great advice. It really is just because I bet I could ask every single person I've ever had on this show, like what they started and what their business is today. And it's going to be totally different. It's just that getting started and pivot, moving along.
Yeah. You don't know until you get into it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation, Nicole. Do you want to tell people where they can find you if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the best place to connect with me is on Instagram. So my Instagram is it's Nicole Haney. So ITSNICOLEHANEY. And you can connect with me there. I'm also on TikTok and I have a podcast as well, which we talked about. So my podcast is called Goals and Gratitude. You can listen to it on Spotify or you can check it out on YouTube.
Awesome. And I will link everything in the show notes. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today.